Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I'm Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about The Handmaid's Tale, which is a new show. Season 1, Episode 1, it is from Hulu. The first episode is called Offred, which, you heard that right, Offred. This is the name of a character in the show. It confused me at first as well. Uh, but, no, so this is a new show from Hulu. We'll start spoiler free, as we always do for episode 1s before we go into spoilers, somewhere in the middle. And that's, yes, what we'll do. So this show is kind of a dystopian future, told through a very specific lens, and that is of not just females, but specifically to do with birth.
Yeah,
This entire dystopia has come about because birth rates have plummeted, more and more women can't give birth, and as a result, this seemingly fascist regime has stepped in place in the US, and there seems to still be like an ongoing war. There's still an ongoing resistance to fight it, but they seem to be mostly in power. And
yeah, it seems to be a recent development.
yeah, because the main character, played by Elizabeth Moss, Offred, she like we see her flashbacks in this first episode, and she already had a son in this old world, our world essentially, and this is like she's been this new handmaid for a few months by the sounds of it in the present day part of the story.
Yeah,
So it is a new development, yeah. So what is a handmaid? A handmaid is someone, because at first you hear handmaid and you think, all right, so it's like a servant. They're enslaving people, and they are to a degree, but it's more specific than that. They're actually there to give children. they're
yes, they're concubines essentially.
yeah, they're breeding stock, as one character puts it. For the rich barons and people of that nature, because their wives are infertile and therefore
They
they're
need to
there
continue
for
their
that.
family line somehow.
Apparently, yeah. And it's all very strict and regimented. They are treated with absolute fear and battery, and it's proper like old school, Old Testament discipline and all the rest of it. Anything that does not result in continuing the population is seen as illegal, but more than illegal, just straight death penalties. So gay, no, contraception, no. So it's a cheery tale. It's a cheery story, very upbeat. I feel invigorated after watching it. I think anyone who's went through any kind of dark time in their life recently can watch this and feel uplifted, and their spirits will be raised. I tell a lie. It is probably the it's probably the heaviest thing I've watched in a while.
Yes,
That's not to
yes,
say there's not some moments of levity, because there kind of is. One of the
there's
main storytelling mechanics is that Elizabeth Moss' character is constantly, and I won't quite call it narrating. It's more live thoughts, because like stuff will
yeah,
happen and you will hear her think before she says something, and that can lead to a little bit of humor here or there, because she'll think what
yeah,
she's really thinking, and then you'll hear what she says to cover it up, because she's in a fascist society and she's not allowed to say anything else. But
yeah. It's definitely speckled in there here and there.
yeah. I'd probably say it's a really effective mechanic in this, actually, because the whole idea is that they all have to hide who they are. They've all been shoehorned into, you're this role, you're not allowed to be anything else. So the idea of we get to be privy to our private thoughts.
Yeah, let's just actually know who she is as a character, because obviously
Yeah,
we see all these other characters, but we don't really know them because of this where
yeah.
they have to be private. They have to be this
They're they're,
non-individual.
they're all made to dress the same. They all have these big stupid cone things on, because they're not meant to look at people in the eye. So
Yeah,
the whole idea is they're hiding their face and all the rest of it, which seemingly is a thing here for, like, so it's not to lure any men in, because it's your fault
mm,
if you lure a man in, so you hide your face so you don't do that
yeah.
kind of thing. All of it sort of stems from these kind of core ideas. So was it any good, I guess, before we get to spoilers? I think you want a general idea if it's worth watching. Yes,
Yeah, definitely.
it's very solid.
Yeah, I'd forgotten the sort of production values that you can expect from Hulu, because obviously we haven't watched a lot of Hulu content recently.
It's been a while.
Yeah, and then it opens up and it's just like, oh yeah, they put money in these things.
Yeah. The direction is very strong right from the start. It is kind of throughout. It does a lot of things where, because again we're through this one character's perspective of everything, uh, I can't speak today, apparently. But because we're through this one character's perspective, there'll be moments where we completely zone in on her point of view. We completely zone in,
Yeah.
and because she has that stupid cone thing on, the camera can go right up to her face, and it hides our vision as well because we can't see anything out the sides.
Everything's filtered through her in a very effective way.
Yeah, but of course we're learning through it. Obviously, she does kind of talk to us. As much as I said it wasn't quite narration, there are moments where it does kind of feel like she is almost speaking to us.
Yeah.
And I think because everything's through our perspective and we see everything from her, everything else feels cold. Everything else feels like they're trying to be this, they're trying to be that. She's explaining the world to us, so it does feel like she's talking to us, but at the same time, it is her thoughts.
Yeah, definitely.
There's definitely a mix of it in there, but direction is good from the get go. It's well paced as well. The entire episode, it builds to something they keep talking about. They keep talking about a ceremony, and I guessed quite quickly what the ceremony was, but they kept building to it, and everyone was talking about it. And another aspect of it is they all, again, compare it to fascism, is they all have these set little phrases that they say to each other to say hello, to say goodbye. In his eye, praise be, like, it might as well be Hail Hitler and so on.
Yeah, pretty much.
Very much that kind of thing. It was interesting sort of discovering how the world worked through the episode, because I think at first, like, alright, so they're slaves, and then you think, alright, there's more to it than that, but then you see how it affects other people and how there's some layers to it, because I think especially the wife character, played Yvonne Strahovski, her character is, like, she is the sort of the rich wife who is horrible to her, but you can see that she's not necessarily happy the entire time about how the world is and how the arrangement works.
Yeah, there's definitely it's more noticeable amongst the women, obviously, that they're split directly into classes. There's a very class system going on, because obviously you have the wealthy people like the wife, and then you have the people who are the special ones who are still fertile. But then you have all the other, I think they call them Marthas, who are just doing...
Which, by the way, there could be very little conflict in this world, because everyone's got a Martha, so there could be no fighting of any kind.
Exactly.
That's a topical joke. Yes. Yes, there's Marthas. Marthas are basically another type of servant. They seem to be the actual maids, essentially. They seem to be they seem to do the actual maid work, whereas the handmaids might do a little bit of that, but they're more there for the conception and birth giving. So that seems to be how the world works. I still have some questions though as to how they separate certain people. Like, how did the rich men meet their wives? Where do they come from? I mean, especially it's a new development as well. So you imagine this is all just from before all these marriages, but how do new men get their new wives and so on? Like, how does this work? Maybe they've not thought about that yet because it is just so new. Maybe that's the sort of thing I'll be interested.
But we can learn as we go on.
Oh yeah, I feel like we'll learn more about this world as it goes. We certainly, I think, obviously we said it's really heavy. I think it's heavy. Obviously, what's happening to everyone in the show is awful, but there's even more layers of awful as you watch the first episode. There's by the time you get to the end of it, you realise just on a subconscious level what they're doing to these people.
Yeah.
Not just because obviously, you're essentially being a sex slave to give birth to people. Obviously, awful from the get go, but there's other layers to how they run society, to how they make them think, to how they try and force them into, and it brings these different layers into it. And I like the sort of the fact that it's so focused and we're from her perspective, but you get this sense of a larger world. You get the sense of there is like a war going on trying to actually end this. Like, there are people still fighting.
Yeah, and it seems to be specifically America that are so against this.
No, because they mentioned trying to cross into Canada as a way
where
out.
Presumably it was safer, and it begs the question: is Canada experiencing the same problems with the infertility, or is it just they treat them better? Like, do they just not have this system? I don't know, but I hope we learn a bit more.
I'm going to assume they don't have the system, but that's just a hunch more than anything else at this point.
Yeah, that's fair.
But no, the character beats are well played, and because it is so dire, when there is like a moment of hope, it's kind of like, all right, okay, because essentially what this show's about, like anything that's actually set, like if you make a movie, it's actually set in like Nazi Germany, that kind of thing. Those movies tend to be about the strength of spirit and the strength of hope, and like sort of fighting through it and try to survive in the system until the hopefully the light on the other side eventually shines. And you can certainly, right from the get go, that's the sort of the mission statement throughout this entire episode. It's like, she needs to be strong She needs to
Yeah.
try and survive, and for reasons we'll talk about in spoilers. But like that's kind of really what it's. So as much as it is a very heavy, very kind of depressing at times show, I think ultimately there's going to be a hopeful message in here about the human spirit, which you know.
I mean, that's feel like that is what's to be expected.
Yeah, I think if it wasn't, we'd all just be miserable by the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, it's quite a miserable episode, so who knows?
But there's moments of niceness. So I think we'll go to spoilers. I think we want to talk about some plot points and talk about how things work in the episode. So full spoilers from this point on for episode 1 of The Handmaiden. So, not The Handmaiden, The Handmaid's Tale. I've been doing that since.
You've been doing that for months.
I have been doing that every time we've talked about this show.
I was shocked when you introduced the title correctly. I'll be quite honest.
Well, look, there was a movie that came out just the end of last year called The Handmaiden. I liked it a lot. It was a really good movie, Korean film. I recommend you check it out. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it all season. Just accept it at this point. All right, so Offred. In fact, one of the most powerful lines, because we start with this, like she's in her little room, her little servant's room, and she's only told us, and she talks about how, okay, the glass is not, it's not shattered glass, and that's not because they're worried about us escaping, because handmaids won't run very far. Like,
where are you gonna go?
Yeah, we won't get very far because we see when they're outside, there's like these militant assholes patrolling everywhere. Like, it's proper full on police state to like turned up to 11. But what they're worried about is you killing yourself. Well, she doesn't even say that. She calls it the other kind of escape. And she starts talking about glass and cutting and using a sheet to hang yourself and all these kind of things, and how she doesn't try to think about that. But the most powerful line for me at the start of the episode was, my name's Offred. I used to have another name, but it's forbidden. And it's like, alright, because right away it sets up what it is. And it bookends the episode, of course, wonderfully, because at the end of the episode, in the narration again to us, sitting in the exact same spot, she says, my husband's name was this, my daughter's name was this, my name was June. Cut to... And it's like that declaration of the fighting spirit again, like, I'm not giving up.
Yeah, even if she's not saying it out loud, she's still thinking it.
Yeah. Because you're not allowed to say it out loud, and that's kind of why the whole narration thoughts technique here works really well, given the story that's going on. But I think that's a declaration to us, is like her saying, because at the start of the episode she's talking to us as well, and she says, my name's forbidden, I'm not allowed to say it. But at the end of the episode, it's almost like she finds a little bit of hope again, and she's making a declaration to us, look, I know this has been depressing, but I've got hope that I'll get out of this okay, so should you.
Yeah.
So I think that works really well. So yeah, we find out she had a daughter. Her daughter was taken from her, because we see that, and we also see that moment where she's looking across at the school. So they've got little girls, and I suppose at the schools they're waiting to see, right, you're training for all the services you might be doing. Once you get to a certain age, we can figure out, can you bear children? That's where you go. If you can, you go here. If you can't, so on. Also, things we find out about the world. The people who try to run away. The people who don't straight out kill, because there might be lesbians and gay people. Because the reason why I say lesbian specifically is because we learn of a character. Her friend Moira's girlfriend went to what they call the colony, and then Moira herself, we find out later on, went. Yeah. And at first we don't really know what that means, but we hear some bits throughout about it. You're basically there to clean up toxic waste, and you will die probably quite quickly from the work.
Yeah.
So that does not sound cheery.
Sounds very unpleasant.
Yeah, because that's a big moment for her, of course, Offred. When they go to this, what did they call it? The big thing where they all go to it.
Yeah. It was like a big gathering, wasn't it?
It wasn't the salvation
service.
It wasn't
kind of
cleansing. That wasn't a cleansing. There was a word though. There was a very specific word.
Yeah.
But they go to this, and it turns out that they're here because a crime's been committed specifically to do with the handmaiden, and this was a very powerful scene because she finds out from another old friend that, and the one-eyed girl, we'll talk about the flashbacks in a minute, but that our friend Moira has been sent to the colony and is probably dead. And this, like, she goes full on. This is when we go full into the cone and the camera, right? Full into the cone. She is completely distraught. And we find out about this man who's one of their soldiers. Like, it's one of the guys who was supposed to be a soldier for this regime. Yeah, you can tell because he's got the not Hydra logo on his shoulder, and he's raped a handmaiden, and the woman who runs everything like and trains them all, Aunt Lydia. She's like this, boss. I almost think of her as the teacher from Matilda. I know it's a weird
That's
thing to
very
think.
much what she reminded me of as well,
Yeah,
actually.
but that's what popped out in my head. Of course, it's a much worse thing because she's not just been horrible to kids. She's part of this
Yeah,
fascist regime,
but
but
that's the exact one that I was
yeah.
thinking of.
But she's doing it with fully grown women and calling them sluts. Like, there's a whole completely different
Yeah,
ballpark. But she's like, okay, this man raped a handmaiden, and she was already pregnant. The baby died, and she's like, all right, form a circle, and they form a circle around him. It's like, okay, I'm going to blow a whistle, and until I blow the whistle again, you can do what you want. And they basically all beat him to death,
yeah, it's
and
pretty bloody.
it's pretty bloody. But this scene really worked, and it's not just about violence. The reason why this works so well is because, again, throughout the whole episode, they're not allowed to speak. They're not allowed to do anything unless they're told. They're not allowed this. At one point, Offred literally says in her head, it's when they're talking about the oranges in the supermarket, she's like, I want to scream. And then she just says the phrase, like, inside she wants to scream. So this is like the one time where, like, let it out. This is the one time they're allowed to.
It's literally like a moment of freedom.
Yeah. So even though what they're doing is horrible, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that obviously the guy's guilty of a horrible thing and should be punished, but beaten to death by a mob of people is not not the fitting punishment, I don't think, for anyone.
No.
It's savage. So, but they're given this moment, and obviously it's a crime that's related to them because it's one of their kind essentially in this new regime that has been fallen victim to this, and it's something that has taken away a child, which in this new regime is the most worst thing possible anyone could do. Is
Yeah,
like hamper the birth of a child. So not only is it awful and all the rest of it, and he should be punished, not like this, but he should be punished. It is the one moment where they're allowed to let it out, and every single stream, every single thing that they have wanted to let out, wanted to cry out over the however long it's been since the last time they've had this, it comes out, and they let rip. Because it almost looks like Offred doesn't want to be a part of it at first. She looks upset, but then when that whistle goes, she turns into a savage. Like, her face changes,
yeah,
and she's the first one there to throw a punch.
yeah, and it's really brutal.
Yeah,
It really is.
and this is what I meant about like it being more awful than the obvious. Is that this is what they're also doing to them? They're making them a part of this system. They're
Yeah,
breaking them down, and they're turning them into something awful as well as being victims of everything that's going on. They're making them complicit. They're changing, because not only are awful things happening to them now, this is also something they themselves can feel guilty about later. This is something that is actually ruining their own kind of innocence in a way.
yeah, definitely.
So you add that onto the top of the fact that they're trained to be spies to each other. They're trained not to trust each other, which is why the one moment I hope that happens after this is that her companion, because they always walk in twos because they're supposed to spy on each other. Her companion, off Glen. I'm going to have to get used to all these off names.
Yeah,
Off Glen, because there's a little bit of humour with her at first because Offred doesn't like her and says, "Oh, she's a little shit," and
yeah,
oh, she's proper into this. She's a true believer. She's awful. But it's because Off Glen witnesses her concern about her friend that after this whole event, they finally start talking, and Off Glen opens up and talks about ice cream and talks about how it's better than sex, the good sex, not the bad sex. Or I say the sex they're going through right now specifically, and like they have this moment and they start bonding about they both have children, and it's probably the first moment where like the music sort of lets up and has a bit of emotion in it, as opposed to just it's heartfelt emotion as opposed to
yeah.
the dire sort of oh we're all screwed that you're kind of feeling through otherwise. So as they're walking, you feel a real bond forming, and the line at the end of the scene is perfect, which is like, "It was nice to finally meet you." That was like,
And
perfect.
again, this is another example of just showing you how much they've messed with their heads, not just the actual physical thing that we can see. It's that these two people who are very similar, clearly have had similar experiences, and neither of them actually believe in all of this. But because they've had to put on this outward appearance,
Yeah.
they both thought that the other was a true believer.
You have to imagine that probably most of them, if not all of them,
yeah.
feel this way inside, but they're too scared to say anything else. And by the way, I don't want to gloss over the irony of the situation where Aunt Lydia steps up and says, "This man raped a handmaid," when that's essentially what every single one of them is going through
Yeah.
on a scheduled basis.
Yeah.
where people are complicit, where wives are literally holding them down to be raped. Like that is what is happening in this story. So let's not ignore that irony there.
No, of course not.
And irony is probably too nice a word for it, to be honest. But it's
Yeah.
but
Like you said, it is probably most, if not all. I think there's probably one or two who have snapped. Like, there's a percentage who have completely just snapped and do believe it out of, like the only way they can cope with it.
it's even like Aunt Lydia says in the flashback when they all come in, when Offred slash June comes in for the first time, and she's like, I know this must feel strange, but ordinary is just a word for what you're used to, and in time this will feel ordinary. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, nah. So that made that scene really powerful when she finally has like a connection with someone, with this new friend, this someone who she can kind of trust, and they can say things to each other that are they shouldn't say to anyone, and they can finally have someone to talk to. So that was a nice little twist, if you can even call it a twist. But it was big things for her character. So she mentioned at the end of the scene that there's an eye in your house, and they kept talking about the eyes. Like they mentioned them a few times. Obviously, I don't think we have a strict definition of what that is yet. My current thinking is that it's someone who is either a handmaid or a Martha or one of the servants, but is there to specifically spy into. Because I was thinking maybe it's one of the richer people, but I was like, well, does it really make sense? Because they'd obviously turn them in anyway.
Well, yeah, this is the thing, because one of the phrases that they use to greet like is in his eye or under his eye.
Yeah.
And it implies eye as in it almost sounds religious, like it's gods watching them. But
yeah,
and I'm wondering if it's more of a ruler than an actual god.
Well, that's what I speculated actually, because when I heard eye, because of the whole parallels to Nazi Germany and the way they were speaking to each other, I immediately thought this is their leader, their dictator, their fascist who's doing all this. But when they talk about the eye, like there's an eye in your house, I think that means it's like one of his like spies, like his officers.
Yeah, definitely. Someone undercover specifically for whoever this leader is.
But I don't think, like I said, I think it has to be one of the, like, it has to be the Martha. I don't think it's the Martha because I feel she's too obvious because she's such a bitch to Offred. I'll get used to these names, I swear. It's harder when you have to learn new words. So I think it has to be one of them. And obviously the mechanic who she seems to have a bit of a bond with, who seems to, because she speculates at one point, is he looking at me? Is he noticing me? Is he lonely? Because they mentioned that he's not like he works for them. He's not he's not appointed like they are though, but he's too lower class to be appointed a woman, to be appointed a handmaid.
Yeah.
Because it seems like they don't buy the handmaids. They're just, it's no, you're right, as a rich citizen, here's a handmaid.
Yeah. I mean, he could be the eye in there.
He could be, yeah.
Again, like it's the idea that if you're going to plant someone, you want someone who can actually get close to them and root out who it is.
Yeah.
So
it begs the question though: how does Offglen know there's an eye in there? What connections does she have?
Yeah, it seems like there's some sort of maybe resistance that she's already a part of.
Yeah. Speaking of things, because they're not supposed to look at anything. They're not supposed to, including the news. Because at one point, one of the handmaids at the store mentions, "Oh, your master's on the news. Like they'll do stuff for him," and then they all go quiet. And she's like, "I never read it. I swear, I never read it."
Yeah.
Just showing you how.
It's the control of information, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, dictatorships, fascism, control of information.
Yeah, it's step one in being a successful dictator.
Yes.
Control the media.
Yes. Alternative information. So let's not gloss over the one big scene I think we've not talked about actually is the ceremony.
Yes.
But let's call it what it is. It's organised rape.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what it is. But I think what I almost think the way that it was shot was the only time where I wasn't sure about the direction. Because it almost felt comical to a point. The way it was shot, the way it was these close-ups, and the way, and I guess they were showing how sort of unloving it was supposed to be, how it was supposed to feel super, just mechanical almost. The way he was completely dressed, and she was dressed, and wife's holding him down, and just how like cold it was, just like, and that worked for me as it went on. But the way the scene started with all these close-ups made it feel just a little bit weird to me. But
Yeah,
I guess maybe
okay.
that's the point. But
But it does that one where it's a close one in face, and then you do it the one that's from her perspective, like literally, like her view. And obviously, I think that one works because it's just like this is where it puts you in her mind again.
yeah, yeah. Uh, I think almost the interesting thing here is because we hear Serena Joy, who's Yvonne Strahovski's character, the wife, when she sort of greets Offred for the first time, which by the way, Offred was at another placement and it didn't work out, and we don't get to hear any more about that. But I'm sure that's something that we'll learn more
Yeah,
about later, like what happened there. Uh, but she's like, yeah, I'm married to my husband till death do us part. So if I see anything funny, I will retaliate.
mm.
And obviously, it's this fear that the husband will fall for her, like, because it's
Yeah,
like because it's the actual mother of his child, because or just because it's sex. And I think one thing that I pointed out is they get all the various servants in for the start of the ceremony,
mm.
and she mentions in the narration that the husband knocks on the door to come in because I think as an effort to make the wife feel more comfortable, she's in charge throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. I think it's just why she's there at all, and she's the one holding her down. She's the one in
Yeah.
control. She can literally like pull her out of the way if she wanted to.
But it almost feels like just an empty gesture. It's like, here, so you don't feel like you're
Yeah.
belittled. But at the same time, you still see her with a tear in her eye.
And yeah, and like she says, the small gestures are everything in this house. So it's like even though it seems like nothing, maybe that is actually really a big deal to them.
Yeah, because you see her with a tear in her eye, and she gets, and you almost feel like she's being so cold to her because she doesn't like this system. She doesn't like this setup. She's almost ashamed that she can't just do it. She can't give him a child, and
Yeah,
like this entire system's made her to feel like she is less significant when she shouldn't be. There shouldn't be anything wrong with that, but the system makes her feel that way. And even the way at the end, because the whole thing, obviously, I mean, the thing from the get go is sexist as hell. But even the fact that as the rich wife, it's still sexist to her because we see at the end that even like when the husband goes off to do his job, like he's a commander commanding whatever he commands, we don't really get a good sense of his job at this point. He's probably involved in the whole militia and what they're all doing, but
well, I would assume so. Being
yeah,
commander is a military rank.
yeah, it could be. Yeah, but you don't know. Commander could be just a new rank to give out to anyone who's,
It could. It could.
the commander could just be the head of the house. That could be the new word for it.
That's fair.
But you see that he shuts the door and she's left out in the cold. She's left out there, and again she snaps when she sees Offred staring at her because, like, she's frustrated and she's taking it out on her.
Yeah.
When they're both in different ways, but they're both being oppressed.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's it's a heavy show, full of lots of things like this. Obviously, we got flashbacks to the initiation of everything. They're taught to slut shame. They're taught to do this. They're taught to do that, and that's all fine and well. Sets up the story. I don't know if we're going to get much more of that because it feels like we've wrapped that stuff up. What I think we will get more of is the flashbacks pre.
Yeah, I can see those. Maybe not every episode,
Yeah.
but
It was just
for a
it was
bit.
the little ones with with Moira telling her she was pregnant, the ones in the beach with her daughter. I feel like we'll get a lot of little things like that probably sprinkled throughout.
Yeah.
It just seems like the case. So no, that was very good.
Yeah, it was.
I am looking forward. Obviously, the first three episodes all were put out at the same time. We will have episode 2 tomorrow. We're going to do them. The first three we're going to do one per day. Obviously, next week going forward, it'll just be every week as they get released. But so you can look forward to episode 2 review it tomorrow. But episode 1 was very strong, so I recommend checking it out. But no, that's us. Any final thoughts, Connor? Anything I've missed that you'd like to?
You mentioned how there was that one bit where the music finally had emotion.
Yeah, when they're
like
talking about their
heartfelt,
kids,
but
because it
I
felt like
think-
they're connecting.
Yeah, and I think in general the music was actually really fantastic. Really set the tone
Oh
throughout.
yeah, yeah. It was because it was very cold strings for a lot of it.
Yeah, there was a lot of these deep cellos just playing just underneath everything, just giving it this ominous sense.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, very, very emotional. It was a. It also, it's probably the most unique dystopia. Like I've never seen a dystopia portrayed in because it's very present day feeling in terms of like they didn't do anything futuristic. There's nothing like that. It's just, and it's not even like we're in a like things have collapsed. Like it's still recognizable streets. It's still recognizable like buildings and recognizable society, except for the fact that we've got people dressed like all this and they're doing all this.
Yeah,
The system's
the color
changed.
schemes are very important as
Yeah.
well.
Like the system's changed, but the actual physical things look the same, and
Yeah,
that's I think that makes it hit harder. I think for a present day audience, because you watch it and go, oh shit, this is in our world. This is like not that far removed in terms of.
yeah, definitely.
So, no, it's interesting. So, let us know what you thought of the episode if you've watched it in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on Twitter at mild_fudge for channel updates. Hell, individual Twitters on the screen if you want to see us ramble about various things. But yeah, happy Alien Day. Also, a form of forced birth is the facehugger and chestbuster combo.
You had to get a thematic link in there somehow.
I just thought of it as I said it. I'm like, oh, this fits. This somehow clicks together. But it's Alien Day, and I like aliens, so I'm throwing a mention in. Thanks for watching, guys. Have you got any vanilla?